What's good, y'all? Welcome to another Anything by Mansa Cannon. I'm Mansa. I got my guy on today. I'm looking forward to Jordan Roman coming in with some great information. We're going to be talking about the insurance industry, but more importantly, the operations side. We'll also be talking about businesses in operation. We oftentimes see the people talking about sales. We oftentimes see the surface level, the shiny things, and we even talk about people who are the engineers, but we need to understand the people who are making sure that the business is operating in the way that it needs to, has all the functions in place and moving in the most productive and efficient way. This is something that he was an expert at. He also had people under him. So today I'm hoping that you're going to see yourself some of the skills within him, and you can relate and you can take in information that's going to allow you to elevate yourself. Without further ado, what's good, man? How you doing, Jordan?
Man, I'm good. How you been, bro? It's been a while. Haven't seen you
Yeah,
in a minute, but
yeah,
it's good.
yeah.
Good,
So
good.
Jordan is, and the way we build our relationship is through the Urban League Young Professionals. He's out there in Milwaukee. He was a president. I was a president here in Cincinnati, Greater Southwestern Ohio, chapter name. And so we got some good times, some good work that we've both done out there in these streets, man. Trying to
Yeah,
make a difference for our people as well as for the community of all ages. So
yeah, absolutely. That was a good time being a president. A lot of hard work. People understand what goes into being a president for a local chapter. It's like a job within a job. So,
for
but it's a
free.
good experience. Yeah,
A job within a job
yeah,
for free.
for
Um,
free.
yeah. So I'll say I have to ask, of course, the most important question, which allows me to even interview you. Your jobs that you've had, did you like them?
Yeah, for the most part, I like them. I look at it this way. I look at each job that I've had as a stepping stone, as an opportunity to learn and grow. So even some of the positions I've had that I didn't necessarily like or love, I always looked at it as an opportunity to learn something from it. And I do, I don't take it for granted. I've really been able to get to where I'm at today because of the experiences and the jobs that I've had. So each one of the jobs that I've really done and progressed in has led me to the positions and the stuff that I'm doing today. So
That
yeah,
makes sense. That's frankly how real life tends to happen to most of us is we just fumble around until we figure out everything that we want to learn in order to become what we really want to be.
right.
And things just God steps in, the universe, whatever you want to call it, steps in, and life goes hopefully the way that you want it because of the lessons, not the losses.
Absolutely. And that's
Um,
that's me again, that's that journey. Most of the jobs I've had, I wasn't planning to get into like the operations. I don't have an operations background and it's something that, opportunity arose and I took advantage of it. And it's led me now to where I'm at now, but I wouldn't have had again those experiences without going through like those steps ordained by God, like you said, like you just learning on the way, and that journey is he's getting you ultimately to where you're ultimately supposed to be, I believe in life. So
well, since we're talking about the journey, let's go all the way to the beginning prior to the journey really taking place, which is what was that first job that you remember wanting to ever have? That first one. It can be ridiculous. It doesn't have
yeah,
to be legit.
I wanted to be an architect.
Well, that ain't legit
I
at
grew
all.
up, I wanted to like design and do all kind of stuff, build buildings or design buildings and whatnot. That was the first job that I ever thought was like, oh, that's cool, going downtown Milwaukee, looking at the big buildings and whatnot. And that was just like something that I always wanted to do. But then I got into what it actually requires to do that job, and there's a lot of math and a lot of science and stuff. And I was good at that stuff, but it wasn't a passion. So then after that, I really wanted to then get into becoming a lawyer. So law school was always my goal, which never happened. But law school was a very major part of what I wanted to do going into from middle school and high school and trying to like plan for my future and whatnot. But like we said earlier, God changes things and it doesn't work out the way you plan it. But I still do that. I like to argue and debate and use my political chops. So everybody thought and still thinks that I should go to law school and become a lawyer, but I'm happy doing what I'm doing now.
Okay. Okay. Well, what was the transition? What was going on in high school into college? What was your thought process? Of course, I know what your degrees are, but of course, I want you to share them. So,
Yeah.
what was the thought process going into college, if there really was one? Because, perfect example, I just knew I wanted to be a psychologist uh, or just a counselor in general. Because I was always doing it in high school. We all, you know how some people always designate that one friend as the person that you go for consultation all the time, even though we're grossly underqualified. But that was something I was passionate about and loved. And I just had been told so many wild stories that were frankly devastating. I was like, I got to get in psychology and make a difference and help. And then I got there and had some conversations, and it became a nothing degree because I didn't get a master's in it, a doctorate in it. But nonetheless, I did work in the industry. So that was my thought process. I'm just curious to know, what was your thought process going into college with the degrees that you chosen?
Well, let me first start off and say I went to school. I'm an athlete, former athlete. So I went to school on a football and track scholarship. So my main focus outside of what I wanted to do professionally was to become eligible so that I can play football and go to a school where I can get a scholarship, right? So I ended up going to Minnesota and whatnot and playing and whatnot. So when I went into school, I actually changed my major maybe 3 times. So I went into school to do international business and political science. And then I also speak Spanish. So I had a Spanish background. So those are my 3 things I went to school for.
You're fluent in Spanish?
Sí, puedo hablar español. Mi mamá es puertorriqueña. So yes, I speak Spanish. My mother's half Puerto Rican. So you didn't know that?
I didn't know that part. That is so freaking cool, bro. That's so
Puerto Rican.
No, we all got cut with the same thing. So we're very similar. We just put on different clothes and have different accents. Most people don't realize that, but all the way from South America, we're cut with the same same thing pretty much.
But so I went to school for political science and international business in Spanish. But I was taking the political science courses, and it was just like, although I love politics now, the actual school and learning political science from the beginnings, traditions of it was so boring to me. So I went my whole freshman and sophomore years in political science, international business. But then I took this class the end of my senior year, or the end of my junior year, the end of my sophomore year, sorry, going into my junior year of sociology class called the Race, Class, and Gender, Sociology of Race, Class, and Gender. And that class changed my whole life. Like I started learning about a whole lot of stuff that was affecting us. You know, the study of sociology is the study of society and people. So we were talking about race, class, the intersections of race, class, and gender, and how that impacts society. So I changed my major that year, going into my junior year, to sociology and political science, kept the political science as a minor, and then I did a double. So I had a double major in political science. I'm sorry, I had a double major in Spanish and sociology with a minor in political science is what I ultimately graduated undergrad with.
Okay. Sticking with the Spanish though, because I find that to be such a dynamic skill. Just having another language is dynamic in business because it opens you up to different opportunities. It also allows you to be more international if you have a desire. Have you been able to utilize your second language in the positions that you've had?
Yes. I used to do some translations in the insurance company that I was working for. I did a lot of the translations when we didn't have a Spanish speaking translator on staff. So I did that in the intermediate. But I also was able to travel to a lot of countries within that role, doing some of the operation stuff. So I was able to travel to Costa Rica, been to Mexico a few times, Colombia, when I travel, even just for fun or for work, I try to acclimate myself and make myself speak Spanish because I'm not as fluent anymore as I used to be. I'm still fairly okay, but I'm not as fluent as I used to be when I was speaking all the time. But those jobs that I have had has afforded me the ability to go down there and speak the Spanish and be able to cultivate relationships using that language with other business partners around the world.
Okay. So
I threw you off with that one.
Spanish. It was Spanish. It was the wrong Spanish, and I caught it after I did. I was like, that was actually the letter K. That's hilarious. I'm sorry. No. Yeah, I was definitely trying to speak Spanish and use it, and I Clearly just fumbled that ball. Do me a favor.
Yeah.
We've talked about operations several times. Let's go ahead and define that for the audience. What does operations consist of?
Yeah. Operations really is, in any business, there's an operation side, right? So operations to me is the back end business part of running an organization and keeping it going. So for my example, in the insurance industry, we have insurance is really based on like three different pillars. It's on the executive positions and whatnot, administration. Then you have your sales when you're out in the market trying to sell products to whoever you're selling it to. Then you have your operations team, which takes what the salesmen or and women have sold and kind of make sure that it gets all the way out there, the product to market, right? So I'll just go really quickly what that looks like. So once the insurance block is sold to the enroller or to a client or to a company, the salespeople knocks that down to the insurance company. And what we do is we set up those cases from start to finish. So we go through with our underwriters and make sure that the policies are meeting the needs of each individual applicant. Then once that is finalized, then that goes from the underwriting over to the sales or to the setup of the case. And then the setup of the case is really where my job comes in. So that's where the billing setup, or that's where the billing process is enabled. That's where the client services process is enabled. That's where the sales to client process is enabled. And all of those different components of operations is what my team did to make sure that those products that were ultimately sold by the insurance company or insurance person is getting out to those people, and policies are being paid, and people have their insurance that they applied for throughout the course of the year, or however long they keep it. So really, to me, operations is the lifeblood of any organization. It's what keeps it going. It's what keeps your customers happy. We do a lot of client services on my end too, but it really just keeps the companies going, getting that market or getting that product to market in the most efficient and feasible way.
Okay. I want to backtrack just so people are consistent and able to truly understand what you're saying. You mentioned underwriting. Can you give an explanation of what underwriting is? Because that's not something that just everyone knows.
Yeah. So again, I'm not an expert on underwriting, but I can generally tell you what it is. So when you apply for an insurance policy, the underwriting is usually involves like a medical team and the actuaries, and they're getting these policies. They're making sure that the risk for you having the policy is worth them doing the business, basically. Mm-hmm. So if you have high indicators of bad health, or you're a smoker or different things, they walk you through those process, and they kind of determine what your pricing is going to be, and not just what the price is going to be, but if you're even eligible to get this a product that we've applied for, right? So that underwriting process takes a little bit of time because it does a lot of medical background research. They go through, sometimes they might go through your finances, but usually it's more of your medical makeup and your medical history. And then they decide if you are a risk worth taking to get this insurance policy.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. The part that kind of always surprises me about operations is the fact that it doesn't seem like everyone in operations, or it's not even extremely necessary for people in operations to have worked in the lower levels of the company as they grew into their operations role. And I find that surprising, because I would assume that by doing that, that allows you to truly know and have become a generalist, truly understanding what each company department does, because you've played a role in it. But I've noticed that a good amount of people who've been in operations may not have had any of that real experience. They just know the company. Can you speak on that a little bit, and how is that possible?
Yeah. So when I came into the insurance organization, I actually didn't have any insurance experience at all. Mm-hmm. I had some operations experience, but not insurance. So to your point, what being in operations is taking a holistic view of everything, right? There's this cycle of, I call it a circle of life, right? And every point of the circle, there's different things that fits together. So in operations, in my specific example, I have the billing team right here is on that journey. And then I have the client service team and the sales implementation team. Then you have other different teams. And most times the people in those roles are very specialized in their roles. So they're not necessarily taking a comprehensive, holistic view of the whole thing. They're really just focused on their job and getting what if they have to do in that job done so that it can go on to the next part and get it done. So as an operations manager or leader who comes to an operation, it really is understanding general high level about what each one of those roles do, but not being so much in the details of that job, those jobs. I couldn't tell you for any of the jobs that reported to me, I couldn't tell you what they necessarily did detailed day to day. I knew enough to be dangerous, like in general, I can explain to you. But if you asked me to do their job for a day, I probably feel like I was the most incompetent person in the world because that's not my specialization. That's their specialization. But what I do as operations managers is I make sure that the support is there for all of them to do the job that they're doing to the best of their abilities, and then making sure that I'm thinking about how do all these pieces fit in the whole circle, right? So if I have an issue here, it's going to impact me down here, right? So I have to make sure that all the issues on this rail is fixed so that it goes through the circle properly. So that's why you see people who are in these operational leadership positions who may not have that experience because they're trained or we're trained to look at things again holistically with more of a management overview type of perspective of what the job or what the company is looking for.
So what makes a person qualified for that role? Because as you mentioned, we heard your degrees, and this isn't a business degree. So I would assume that operations is usually, or at least a person who has worked in business. So not worked in business, but has a business degree, a true business background. So what qualifies someone to be an operations manager in operations, as well as even know how to do the job? I mean, is it training? Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of it's training. So let me back up just a little bit too, because I failed to mention what else I do have as far as background, educational background. So I also do have 2 master's degrees. So I have a public policy, urban studies degree, but I also have a master's in public administration, which is a hybrid degree, political science and business administration. So I do actually have components of the business administration technical skills that I've been trained through educationally. So that for me is what has qualified me for that role, is I have that technical background in business management 101 at a graduate level, right? But you don't necessarily need it. I think in business is like business for dummies. Like most businesses, you got revenue coming in and you have to pay your expenses going out, right? So it really what qualifies people for this job is really being able again to look at it comprehensively and look at the whole thing, but it's also like interpersonal skills. So when you get into operations, people think that you're some like this technical person who just knows every little detail of every little job. What it actually is how can you get in there and support people and make sure that they're able to do their job as efficiently as possible, and it's more relational, right? So my job as an operations manager is not to come in and dictate and tell everybody how to do their job. My job is to come in and support them and make sure they're able to do their job comfortably. And then if they need something, walk through a process with them where I get them thinking about how they can best solve their issues, like troubleshooting that issue. So they're looking at it again, like I said earlier, they're looking at it from a specialized view. So when there's issues that they can't resolve, they haven't thought through, sometimes they just need somebody who has a different perspective to say, this is how the whole thing works. This is how you have to look at it. So that to me is where you get your best operational managers are not those ones who are very technically knowledgeable about what's going on, but those who are able to manage effectively, manage people, manage relationships, manage jobs, and then have, again, that comprehensive overview of what the whole organization is looking for, whatever product you're trying to put to market.
Yes, yes. What type of person takes on this role? Who is this person that even wants to do this job?
Yeah, it's operations is tough. Like I said, we deal with the clients, and usually in my role, we are usually dealing with the clients who are upset about something. And then we're dealing with the salespeople who are upset about something, or they're trying to ask us to fit a circle into a square hole or whatever, however that goes. But the people again who want to get in these careers are those who have an apt for management and who can do well with other people. because you have to be able to communicate effectively with people under you, side you, above you. And it's just those type of people who have I would say, a positive, more of a positive aura to themselves, for lack of a better word, or someone who has a lot of calmness. I'm very cool and collective. Everybody always call me like calm, cool, and collective, because there's a lot of stresses that come in operations job anytime. So if you have somebody in there who's just all frazzled all the time and anxious, you're not going to have a good operational effective manager there, because they're getting too consumed with everything, and they're not taking a step back and looking at things with a coolness and a calmness that will allow them to think through a process versus handling things as they come in the moment. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So define which one you were. I know you mentioned something, but you didn't really iron out whether or not you were everything you just said, or you fell into one of those categories. So
I'm a hybrid. In any job or anything I do in life, I like to be prepared as much as possible with all the information. So on one hand, while I can't tell you every detail, I do like to know enough so that I don't look stupid, basically. I never want to look stupid. But at the same time, I am also very laid back. My approach to management is like to let people do their jobs, right? I'm not a micromanager. So in my operational career, I was very hands off and allow people to do their job and deal with those things as they come. And then I would step in with a calm demeanor and say, hey, calm down, so and so. It's not that big a deal. Let's walk through this process. So I've always been able to keep my calmness and collectiveness with dealing with situations and operations, which again, like I said, is always high flying and anxious and just a lot of stresses that come to the job generally. So that is who I think I am. Some people might tell you differently, because when I do have to bust some balls, sometimes I will do that. But generally I don't do that, because I allow people to do their jobs and I respect them and I support them, the work that they need to get done.
a part of operations is processes,
Mhm.
as well as finding better processes.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that? Because oftentimes people don't even realize that they have new systems in place that allow their jobs to be easier. They find new programs that they're utilizing and all these different things, and they don't recognize that operations has been playing a role in providing the resources that allows them to be more functional. As well as, I would love to hear potentially what is some of the opportunities that you all utilize, whether it's feedback and surveys that you get from the actual employees to know how to find the processes that they need, since you already mentioned that you wouldn't do their job, but you have a general idea of how the jobs function.
Yeah, so here we're talking about process improvements and efficiency. So the essence of an operations job is to make something work, right? Is when you get the sales team gives you something that they need to get done, you are trying to find the best way, the most efficient way, the quickest way to get it out to market or to that person. So part of operations job is kind of like trial and error. It's to you have, so in most cases you have like an established protocol or you have an established process, right? But as time and technologies change, you're looking for different ways to take advantage of that. So a part of an operations job is more not even a part, it's a responsibility of any operations job or leader or manager or team to go out there and to test and see what other organizations are doing that are making them more efficient, and whatnot. But it's also taking a look at your established processes you already have and doing like an assessment on them themselves. Like when I went into my company is 120 years old when I was with them. Um, um, so they were not a large insurance company, but middle of the pack. But they had a lot of old ways of doing things. They were kind of hesitant and resistant to change. So here I come, young, 30 at that time I came in, 30-year-old black male, fresh out of grad school with all these great ideas about changing the world, right?
All
Coming
these
into it,
ideas that have been put to work. That's what they
right?
just, he got all these ideas from a book.
Yeah,
He hasn't put them to work yet.
right. And not to mention, I'm in an insurance company, corporate insurance now. So I'm dealing with an established culture right? So we haven't even talked about what that looks like is in corporate America or in insurance. But I'm coming in as an outsider already, and I'm like, we can do this, we can try this. I have ideas for this, and you meet this like blank stare and this wall where everybody's like, well, we've been doing it this way, this way, this way, this whole time, and we've been successful. That's great, but let me show you how to do it differently. As a matter of fact, I'm not just going to show you. Let's walk you through the process. I don't want to show you. I want you to see it for yourself. So let's do it your way. That's great. It's successful. But let me give you 3 other ways you can do it. And then, and in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you let me know what's the best one for you. And what you find is that resistance to change is because they're just scared of change. They don't know any better. So once you give them other options to help them make their lives easier, their jobs easier, they're a little more receptive of those different changes. So again, so back to what I was saying, like it's about creatively and innovatively finding ways for your teams and operations to do things differently and to try things so that they can become more efficient and stop doing things the old way. We were doing everything on paper when I got there. Like it was, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, what year that was. We moved completely from a paper billing process to an online process within 2 years, just because somebody came in with a different mentality and said, there's other systems out here you can use, right? You can use a basic Excel sheet and do all the stuff versus doing it on paper with a ruler, right? This is not 1982 anymore, we're in 2010 or whatever it was.
Where were you finding these processes?
For me,
Excel, we all have that in most cases, but outside of Excel, where were you finding these processes?
I think for me, it was finding him in my training. So with my MPA, we were able to go when I graduated or the year before I graduated, we were able to go and use like the best approaches or best practices out there. So I already came in with newer taught ideas or newer taught strategies and things that I learned in school to bring into like the operational field, right? But I also took it upon myself to go out there and learn like on the internet and Google different things people are using. But another thing that was really good is as you're getting into leadership and management and operations side is you get the ability to build relationship with other operational leaders in other companies. And the best thing for me that I would advise to anybody is you establish those relationships with those other leaders in that industry and you figure out what they're doing. Ask questions about, hey, we have this issue that we're dealing with over here. How do you guys deal with that issue over there? Is there a program that you guys use? Is there a software or is there a way that you guys do something specifically, right? And I think that for me has been the best way that I've been able to modernize in my career, different processes, is because I was able to talk to other organizations who are bigger and more scaled, who are doing things more efficiently already. So why not do some of the same things that they're doing? But all it takes is a simple call or a conversation to say, hey, I have this issue. Walk me through how your organization deals with this issue.
Okay. Well, I want to hear more about this your grad school years. I mean, you got your MBA.
MPA. In public administration.
MPA.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So you got that. You also had some experience, though, in an additional aspect of your degree is connected to business administration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to hear about those years. How many years of school did you do total? And then how many post-grad did you do as well?
So I always tell people that I should have been a doctor for as long as I've been in school. So I did 5 years of undergrad because I played football and redshirted 1 year, and then I changed my major. But I also did 4 years of grad school. So 2 years for the public policy degree, and then I took a year off or half a year off, and then I got back into the public policy program or public administration program as a certificate program. And as while I was doing the certificate, I decided to go back and get the whole MBA or MPA degree. So what was the question?
How many years did you do? So talk a little bit about those. Yeah. Those years in those educations.
Yep. So total years of school, I would say almost 9 years between undergrad and grad school, which they should be calling me Dr. Roman now with all those different schools, but it is what it is. And then postgraduate. I don't have any. You talk about post undergrad or postgraduate school?
Post undergrad. I definitely
Post
said
undergrad. So just 4.5 years. 4 years.
I said post grad.
Yeah. Yep. So just 4 years of post grad experience, and then in those graduate programs, what I like about graduate programs is they give you the more practical real life experience, right? So you do different um, internships with companies and organizations. So I was able to do an internship with the city of Milwaukee in the public health policy program and learn not just how to manage that field, but then how to build relationships and do other different things that you need to use as you become an operations manager. So my learning and journey with that is, I've learned a lot. I went to grad school too. I was working, so I was getting real life experience as well with the graduate experience, which gave me a lot of different experiences and learning opportunities to use to become successful in my career.
Okay. Talk about the actual, you mentioned that you had internships. Speak to that.
Yeah. So during my first graduate degree, the public policy one, I did an internship with the Milwaukee public school systems.
Paid internship?
It, no, we
Okay.
don't do paid.
I'm just curious.
I wish. No, but my first internship was with the Milwaukee Public School Systems, and I was responsible for going to the school board meetings and interviewing them, and then working with them as like a staffer for some of their policy issues and how they go about the process of getting. For me specifically, it was like on the board on the school level, it's about how do you finance schools, right? So I was learning a lot in my internship about how to manage and finance from a governance board of a whole school system of like a greater city of Milwaukee, where we service over 40,000 kids, So that internship was the first one. And then again, like I said, I was able to get an internship with the public health policy program or department at the city of Milwaukee Health Department, where I learned that was probably my first on the job management position. So I was not the manager, but I was given responsibilities with the actual manager to do more of the management type of roles and things. So that's where I really learned got my first hand at learning how to manage people and manage processes, which really helped out in my career. And I figured out that I could do it and I liked it. So I always tell people like I've never had like a regular job. I've always been like a supervisor or manager, straight out of school. So I've been lucky, but you know, but what else? And then another internship that I think I did three. Yep, another internship that I did was with the nonprofit organization that I worked with out of grad school. And there I was able to learn how to start out as a representative payee. So we were state mandated to provide and manage clients' finances throughout the course of the year. But I was also able to learn the back end of how nonprofit organizations build and run their organizations and businesses, which there's some similarities between all of them because again, business is 101. So you have to learn how to manage what you have and how to effectively do that and whatnot. So I was able to get a lot of experiences through the internships, which also prepared me for the jobs that I'm doing now, which was great to have. And I feel like more people should get some of those hands-on experiences in those internships. And I wish they were more readily available, not just for people who are like in grad school and whatnot, but for like high school students. Like if I was in high school and I had an internship where I was managing people, I would probably be a better communicator and a better person in general because I have acquired that skill.
You have so many different degrees. I'm very curious to know what all positions could you do? I know obviously your experience is in operation, but I mean, with your skills in having another language, as well as understanding business, as well as the other aspects, I really want to know, like, it sounds like you can get into government if you wanted to. Of course, you can play a role in, and when I say get into government, I mean like city jobs, local public, like governmental jobs. I don't mean president or all those actual
wouldn't do it anyway.
I'm not talking about becoming a politician, which
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably could, but that's not what I'm saying. I want to highlight that each city has their own different business within them because they are a business themselves.
Right.
So what all things can you do, and what all things have you explored prior to going into that uh, insurance industry?
Yeah. Well, I could do to the first question, I could do a lot just based on my background. So obviously I have the operations, business management, but I also have the public policy. So my technical background is in policy, urban policy, education, housing, labor markets, all that different stuff from a policy background. So I can work for a government or a municipality. I could run for office if I chose to with my background, which could be an asset. I can work for a Fortune 500 company. I could work for a nonprofit organization.
But
I could
doing what though?
probably more in the management field. So most of the jobs that I'm looking at now will be management.
Mhm.
Or if I don't want to handle day-to-day people, it'll be more executive level type roles, which is what I'm looking into and doing, trying to get into like more now. So more directors of organizations, more executive directors, or operational director or operational COO type of roles.
Yep.
I could do those for a lot of different organizations in cross industries because I have that experience. Um, I could Another job that I wanted to do was I wanted to run for the superintendent of a large school district, right? So that job has a lot of operations in it, a lot of business, but you have to have a lot of political savviness to be in that job. You have to have a good relationship. You have to just have a general management mind because you're over thousands of people who are trying to, work into like a goal or whatever they do. So I could do a lot of stuff. Um, Started a business. So I can a consulting where I use all that stuff, and I could work for any organization that I chose to based on my background, educational training, but just based on my professional experience because I have experience running departments, running programs, running organizations, and doing all that stuff. So
And I hear you keep coming back to running organizations. And the one thing I do know about operations is it's one of the, I mean, operations, business development, those are some of the best routes to take if you have a desire in becoming a CEO.
mhm.
Because I know COO, the easy low hanging fruit in operation is you can be COO, chief operation officer, or you could be president of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, people may want to go into the CEO, but sometimes some people actually enjoy just being CEO, COO, and the president, opposed to being the executive officer, because those aren't necessarily the same roles. And some people don't necessarily realize that until they
Yeah.
get into those roles,
Yeah.
or even get to really assess those through people that surround them. Is that something that you desire, is to actually become officially a CEO, or do you more just have that passion for operations?
I definitely would like to become the actual leader, CEO type of executive for an organization or build my own organization.
Mhm.
Um, that is definitely a passion of mine. I do want to do that. If you ask me if I wanted to be back in operations, I would probably say no. Again, I've learned a lot from it, but it's a lot of stresses that come with operations. We deal with everything, so it's like a data dump. It's a client service dump. Like when stuff hits the fan, it hits operations, and we have to fix it or figure it out. Um, but you learn so much doing all those different jobs and operations. And that's why when you have a CEO or a COO who has that operational experience, they understand what it takes to effectively do the job. So when they're in their positions, they are required to look at it from their view as well. They have different stresses and different things that they're responsible for, but they also understand what it takes to complete a product from start to finish. Right. So they can take what they've learned in those different steps and apply that logically in their roles as more of a strategic and visionary leader of the organization. This is what I'm trying to do for the organization, but this is what it requires to get there, right? And that's what it takes to become an effective CEO, which is what I eventually hope to do one day of an organization.
So you've managed a lot. As you said, you've been one of the lucky few who's essentially always been a manager.
Mhm.
Can you speak to the people who actually managed you, as well
Yeah.
as your mentors? I'm sure you
Mhm.
had a mentor at some point. Who were those people who guided you on your path?
Yeah. So lots of mentors, and I would suggest that you guys out there listening, whatever you want to do, whatever you're passionate about, find you somebody who has that experience that you can talk to, lean on, work through issues with. Find you not one mentor, find you 10 mentors, find you a board of directors. It's what I call it. Like everyone has to have their board of directors, which is their mentors. You can walk through stuff. But this,
Before you keep going, the board of directors is such a great concept that I want you to actually explain it. Of course, I've heard of it. We might even heard it at a conference together, but it's been said on many occasions. I want other people to truly understand what a board of directors is before you continue to go. So please break that down.
So your board of directors in most organizations, particularly nonprofit, but even in Fortune 500 companies and most organizations or companies has a board of directors. So these board of directors are usually people who have outside experience from different organizations, different levels of experience, who come in and are basically like advisors to you, right? So for example, we talk about the Urban League. The Urban League has his CEO, but he also has a staff of people who is his executives or co-presidents, and they do different things. So that board of directors are those people that have the same vision in mind as you, but come from it with different experiences. So for my board of director, if I have 8 people on my team, I should be able to go to each one of them and talk to them about situations. And we come together and we talk about different ways to troubleshoot and resolve issues, how to become a better organization, how to become a better company, what are best practices.
In general, we talking about mentors because I want to stay in that area of board of directors because you're highlighting a lot of aspects about the board of directors. The fact that I can have a board of director who can really teach me on how to really sell myself. I have another board of directors, another board member who essentially allows me to is my connector. And I have another person who is my sponsor, has the finances to help really push me into the direction I want to go with the actual finances that I may not have at the time. There's different levels to it. And I feel that I want to make sure that people hear that opposed to just solely seeing the business side. So definitely.
So that's important. So in your personal board of directors, like you just said, like I have my mentor who has 30 years of business experience. So that's who I go to for this. And then I have a mentor who's really into like stocks and exchanges. And that's, someone who's getting into that, like someone I can go to and talk about how do I develop multiple streams of income and how do I really plan for retirement and do all that stuff. And then you have someone else who is your relationship expert. Like you're having trouble with your wife or your girl, and you're like, I need to talk to somebody who understands this, who's been through it. Like, how do I make my woman happy because she's struggling right now? Like, those are the people that you trust. And then you have other people, like you said, that just do different things that you could depend on because there's so many different aspects of life that people deal with. You need people who have experience in that, who can help you do that thing. So that personal board of directors are those people that you are comfortable and trusted with, who can help you accomplish your dreams, who are non-judgmental, but who are there to help you do the things that you want to do and become successful.
So your board of directors, and more importantly at this point, your mentors, how did you go about acquiring them? And what value have you seen that you've acquired from them?
Most of my mentors have actually come through either my graduate experience or through some of the jobs that I've been to. So one of the previous questions you asked me, like, who was the one mentor who did the most for me or who I value the most? She was actually my boss when I was at the nonprofit organization. And she was she was probably just 3 or 4 years older than I was. But she saw something in me and she gave me every opportunity to do everything that she was doing. And it wasn't because she didn't want to do it. She was like, I want you to learn this because I want you to have my position one day. Or because her things she used to always say, I'm not going to be here forever. So I need to train somebody to do the job that I'm doing. Right. So she gave me a lot of opportunities to learn and grow in that position that I would not have had otherwise, because you're not privy, you don't have access to that kind of stuff. And that's how I manage people too. Like I'm trying to, an effective leader to me is how many different leaders can you create, right? That to me is the best leader right there. Like I don't want to come in and do the whole job myself. I need to train an army of people who can do everything just as well as I can. That's leadership. That's good to me. So she's the one of the main mentors that has done that for me.
Gotcha. No, that makes me think of one of my favorite quotes, which is a great leader doesn't measure their success by how many followers they have. A great leader measures their success by how unnecessary they become.
Yep.
Like and this is Miles Monroe, who was an actual pastor in the Bahamas. And for that reason, of course, he spoke of Jesus and he was like, I have to leave you. Like their Christianity existed after Jesus left because that's when the religion kicked in.
Right.
And that's where you have a great leader that comes to a team and really coaches you up. And all of a sudden, boom, you have similar skills to them because they're tightening you up and they're sharpening more importantly, they're sharpening the skills that you currently have.
Right.
People get so locked into trying to fix skills that they obviously are weak in, opposed to focusing solely into what they're really good at, because that makes them a specialist and it might allow them to be elevated into levels that they may not have been able to be elevated in if they were a generalist, unless they want to be a generalist and in operations.
Right. Right. No,
So,
that's exactly it. That's true. I got nothing else to say to that. That's exactly that's my leadership philosophy is building other leaders to become the best they could be.
how many times have you had to manage up? And so people actually understand what manage up. And once again, I'm gonna keep pushing some Urban League feed because this is the first times I ever heard this concept. I want to say it might have been I'm spacing our immediate past VP. She was talking about it, and it was in a session prior to her becoming VP. And she was talking about managing up. What's managing up? Managing up is essentially recognizing that I have people above me. And yes, I'm focused on managing my people below me. I hate saying it like that, but you understand, who work with me. And I need to make sure that they're guiding me the way that I need to be guided, allowing me to develop the way I need to be developed. I need to make sure that this environment is healthy as well. It's not just solely about being present and being told what to do by your quote unquote superior. It's about being able to function fully in your role and knowing that sometimes you need to speak up, even to those who are up above you, about being able to do your role better through the sites that you see, through your actual day-to-day experience. So talk about some of the managing up opportunities that you've had in life, because we've all had those.
Yeah. So I look at it is this way. First, before I even say that, I have been in great organizations, and I don't know if you've had that experience, but I get into an organization with my background and experience, and then when I am looking at the leaders above me, I'm like, how did you guys get there? Who did you know? Because that don't make any sense at all. Like, how did you get there? Right. So I've had that experience more often than not, actually. So which leads me to this. You have to always be your own advocate. That's the note that I wrote. And especially when you're in operations or a leader or manager in any organization, because you do have superiors above you that you report to, but you can't do your job effectively unless they are there supporting and helping you, right? So you have to be your own advocate and ask for the help you need, because no one's going to give it to you, really. You have to go up there and demand it, and you have to say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is how effective I want to be, but I can't do this without your support and without you allowing me to do these different things. And sometimes that requires going even above them, your direct supervisor. Like if they're not helping you and supporting you, being your own advocate, you got to find somebody who can help you, right? And sometimes that means going around that person above you to get to somebody else who can make a difference and make an impact for what you're doing. So managing up, again, it's important because as the operations person, I'll just talk operationally, they are trusting me to make sure that I'm delivering products to market, whatever that product is, right? So that means that they're allowing me to create a process. They're allowing me to assess it. They're allowing me to hold people accountable to it. But so what that generally means to me is, if you're going to let me do my job, let me do my job the way I need to do it. right? So I need to tell you guys, I need to dictate to you, managing up to you, this is how I'm running the program. This is what I need from you. I'm not asking you to do anything. If you're giving me this job to do this, I need you to do X, Y, Z. So I'm demanding and ordering you to give me these supports or these different things because I can't do the job that you hired me to do without these different things. So again, you just have to be an advocate for yourself and ask for it. Ask for the trainings you think you need, but you also have to be a self-proponent too and go out there and learn different things. And you can bring different things to the company. In my experience, when I do manage up and when I do go to my superiors with different ideas, I'm always prepared and always, because they always have questions. I've learned that in any insurance, like be able to defend what you're doing. Like I'm making this decision because X, Y, Z. I've studied it. I know what this is going to do, what it's going to lead to. This is why I'm doing it. So that's my general overview for managing it up and how to approach that.
And it may seem really scary for someone to think I'm going to go and manage up, because just the wording sounds scary, depending on how your boss or your manager operates and treats you.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that they don't want to deal with turnover. The more turnover they have, the more they have to continue to train people on the job, opposed to just allowing the person who's currently in the role to build the skills that they currently have, or build the ones they want to have. So in the process of being an advocate, recognizing, hey, I need to get better here. A manager generally should be appreciative of that, especially if you're doing your job well, that you're seeing opportunities to improve, to make the business and make your position better and what you're doing better. And the company's only going to get better because you're growing and you're going to potentially rub off. So that is something that people have to recognize. Like, I can get better over here. I'm doing this well, and I need to articulate that to the person that's in charge of that. And what I want to say, and I have to stress this, because this was a great lesson I learned in management, was, and not even just in management, in managing up, is you have to know who can tell you no.
Yep.
Who can tell you no and who can tell you yes. Now, that sounds like the same person, but it may not be.
Right.
And I remember asking someone for something that they couldn't give me. And they just started to tell me why I shouldn't have it. And then I felt discouraged. I went on about my day and doing what I was doing and dealing with what I had to deal with. And then about 2 weeks later, I was like, wait, they weren't qualified to give it to me. And I know the person who is. And so I'm going to go and speak to the person who is qualified to provide this for me, especially knowing that the reason they told me has nothing to do with something that's going to impact my job, impact the business. It's just essentially a no, you can't have that, which, no, we're going to make this business better. So I'm going to go speak to the person who can say yes and who can truly tell me no if it's a real no. And I got what I needed. And that was a very eye-opening situation of really learning. Not everyone can tell you no that's telling you no.
Right.
You need to know the difference.
But it's also like you had to go through that experience, and it took you 2 weeks, but then you're like, no, I need this. So I need to go back and ask the person who can provide it to me, right? Because it's going to make my job better.
I had to. I just couldn't continue to live like that, and I like my business.
So it's about like having confidence in your ability to do whatever it is, but like going back to there and like defending whatever you're asking for. Like it goes back to that. Like, I'm asking for this because I need this because of X, Y, Z. I'm not just asking it because I want to. Like, I need this to do my job. Like, so let me explain to you why I'm doing it. Let me, again, managing up. Let me explain to you why I'm doing this and why it's important to you and why I need you to make this decision and to get on board with me. Even though I'm a subordinate to you, this is why you need me, right, to do this. So it's just having that mindset to do that and then go back and defend yourself and articulate what you need.
I have a question. It may seem random, but it's not, I assure you.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm not asking because I don't want to have to figure out what it is that you do and don't eat. So I'm telling you something that you don't eat right now, hypothetically. You don't eat onions, you don't eat mayo, and you don't eat tomatoes.
Okay.
You're at the restaurant and You see these things on the menu. Now, you know it's hard to take mayo off, but it's easy to just go ahead and take the onion and the tomato off.
Okay.
Tell the waiter when you order what you wanted, hey, no tomatoes, no onions, and no mayo. Or do you just tell them no mayo? Or do you not tell them anything and you just deal with whatever they give you?
You should tell. I'm the person who tells them exactly what I want. Don't
Okay.
I sound like it? I don't want this.
It's interesting because I remember reading something about that recently where they were talking about a lot of people who tend to really get what they want in life and are able to go to those levels. They are, frankly, the picky eaters, where people are judging the picky eaters for being at the table like, I don't want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And everyone's just looking at them. That's the reality of this world, where unfortunately, a lot of people just accept things that aren't the way they want them when they have the opportunity to ask for it to be exactly what they want. And yes, you're paying for it in that situation, but in life, you're paying for it in other ways. And if you're going to pay for it, you better get what you want.
Right.
And that's where that picky eater conversation is really intriguing to me, because when I read it, I was like, I always get criticized for being the person I am. It's like, if I'm going to give you my money, if like, I have no problem tipping you, but if I'm going to tip you, you better treat me like you appreciate me. You better treat me like you value my me coming in and supporting your business. Otherwise, then I'm going to give you the bare minimum tip because I'm Black and I don't want people to think that Black people don't tip.
Right.
Other than that, I'm a really great tipper in situations in which I'm being treated the way that I'm paying to be treated.
Right.
And I think that people miss that. So I want to articulate that because I feel like people might be able to start sending that waiter back if they don't bring you back what you want because you paid for it.
As they should. And I think that goes to a greater conversation. It's a mindset shift, right? And I think we're seeing that with like this younger generation now. Like they know what they like. They have technology at their hands. They don't take nonsense anymore because they can review and they can research and see it. I think older generations were just used to accepting things as they were. They were taught not to ask or question authority. They were taught to just do whatever somebody says. And this new generation is like, nah, that don't make sense, first of all. And there's a better way to do it. And I want it this way because I can have it this way. And some people say it's like an entitlement thing, but it's not. It's like they've learned, they're in a society where they know what they are and they're free to express who they are and what they want and who they value and what they value. So we have to, as you know, I'm approaching 40. As we're getting older, we have to start shifting that and demanding things and start asking questions and start being an advocate again for ourselves. Like, I want my life to be so, right? I have to work hard and do the stuff, but I also have to ask and demand from people to help me or to give me the things that I need to become successful. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Like, nothing's handed to you in anything, in business and world and relationships. You got to work for it, but you also have to demand the equal respect and stuff from people too. So, but that's a larger conversation about a whole lot of stuff. But it's great.
I do disagree with the fact that
go ahead.
That in life, depending on the circumstances, depending on how you talk and how you and who you know, things can be given to you. I've witnessed it. I've seen it. Heck, I'm not going to lie. I've experienced it. Unfortunately, I've never experienced it professionally, but I've experienced it through just personal life and witnessing benefits that may come. I mean, that's the part of being a salesman too, is being able to get additional benefits that may not necessarily appear for everyone. But I'll say this, I have to step back to something that you mentioned of entitlement, because everyone wants to talk about entitlement. Millennials are aging out of this conversation. So people stop looking at these dudes that are freaking 18 or even 23 and saying, you millennials. No, they're not. Those are centennials or whatever you want to call them. They're not millennials. They're not a part of our group. But nonetheless, the knock that we always were given, and even they are, is entitled. And entitled is a load of crap if the person knows their value. Like, if I know my value and I'm asking you to give me my actual value, then that's not entitlement. That's an expectation that you set for yourself, and knowing like you're trying to produce value because you know your value, and now you're trying to be paid and compensated and treated based off of the value that you bring. Now, if you don't bring that value and you're saying, I want to be the center of the Los Angeles Lakers, and you're standing at a solid 5'10", now that is an entitlement issue. But if you're showing up 7 foot or 6'9", and you got the leaping skills of freaking LeBron still at his age and younger, and you grabbing boards, and you're able to put it back in the hoop, and you're way better than everybody else on the team at doing that, guess what? That's not entitlement. That's a qualification. And it's me demanding that you give me what I am qualified for, opposed to you saying that I'm entitled. And that thing that people keep saying entitled is like, you highlight these kids and these adults now are recognizing, I need this skill set and I'm nowhere to get it. So I'm going to go and get this information ASAP. I'm going to read as much as I need to so I can earn more. I want to learn more so I can earn more. And that entitlement stuff, I feel like it's just something that people are trying to deter people because they spent so much of their life never having the courage to send that waiter back and give me a burger without onions, mayo, and tomatoes. Now put the bacon, the barbecue sauce, and everything else on there. Give me some lettuce, but I do not want these things.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. I definitely agree with that. The way you were explaining it. So I use the word, you said value, but the word I use agency. And I hear this, Karen Hunter on Urban View talk about agency all the time. Like knowing you have that value, that agency in yourself to be proud, you can stand on like the skills and all those different things that you have. And you go out there and demand respect in whatever workplace or wherever you're doing. So it's about knowing who you are, what you could do, what value you bring to the organization, to whatever it is, and standing on it and not taking less than that, right? Yeah. Don't let anybody be condescending to you. Don't let anybody manipulate you or do all this because you know what you're worth and you know what you bring to an organization or to a relationship or whatever it is. So yeah, having that value, having that agency goes a long way. And I think, again, it's not an entitlement. Like you said, these younger kids, they know what values they bring. Now they have a lot of issues too that they haven't learned yet because they haven't experienced life. But
sometimes it is entitlement, but I just want to be clear what the difference is. That's all.
But they know what value they bring. They know what kind of technical acumen they have. They know that they're smarter than previous generations because they have information at their fingertips and they question authority. They call me a flamethrower because I question everything, especially when I'm in all these corporate meetings with everybody. I'm like, why? Tell me why you do it this way, or I think it's this way, or can you just I love doing that just because I'm that guy, but just because it makes them think of things differently. And I think that's what, kids or these youth are doing is they're just questioning authority because things change and there's different ways of doing things.
Better ways to do things.
Better ways of doing
things.
Technology
is I mean, they sell you a phone that's unfinished because it's constantly getting an update every month. So business is unfinished. And it needs to constantly be getting updated at whatever time period the updates are coming in. So are you accepting the updates or are you continuously trying to play on that app and you're hitting later on that update constantly until somebody steps in and say, hey, we don't provide what you're asking for anymore unless you update this item.
Right.
So that's what you're talking about with the business. I have to lean into the conversation of people often get frustrated with when you graduate school, you need experience to get experience. By you becoming a manager in majority of the roles that you've had and stepping over that, what did you do to not have to deal with, go get some experience for this role? And I'm sure you maybe have experienced that as well.
Yeah. So for every role that I have had, there's probably 3 or 4 that I didn't get because of that exact reason. And that's just a reality of any industry you're working in. They are looking for experience. But they also want you to have background school too. So unless you're working and going to school, you can't, like you said, you can't get experience without that experience. So it's a struggle. And I know a lot of younger people who are trying to get into their industries and their markets I can't relate to because these organizations aren't going to pay you without the experience, or at least they're not going to pay you what you want. So then you have to go in these entry-level jobs and doing this stuff that you're way overqualified to do for 2 or 3 years just to get that experience to get the job that you want to do.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky and fortunate in my life. I haven't had to do that for the most part, but I have gone for jobs who have not accepted me or not hired me because I didn't have that experience that they're looking for. So the question, how do I get around there? How do I deal with that? Is just having a positive attitude. Again, I think it goes back to that agency too and that value. Like I knew that I have these degrees and I have this personality and I have this professional experience. So I know what value I bring to an organization, any organization. So if they don't want me, they're bad. There's somebody else who's gonna hire me, right? And that's the mindset that I've always had. Like, or the other mindset is if it's God's will, then it's God's will. So if that's not the job for me, that's not the job for me. So maybe he's setting me up for something greater that I need to be patient and wait for. So those are just mentalities that I've tried to use to do that.
Yeah.
Now, you didn't ask this, but like dealing with that on the job, I have come into jobs where, again, the young guy who has no real experience but has all these degrees, and I have to deal with the resentment and hate from other people who have been in those jobs for however many years, right? And they're mad at me because I got hired from the outside and they didn't get hired for this position or they didn't even get considered because whatever reason. So I always try to, as professionally and respectfully as I can, I always try to turn it back on them and say, what are you doing? Or what haven't you done? Because if you were the right person for this job and you applied for it and you interviewed for it and you've been at this organization for however many years, so your bosses and the hiring managers already know your work ethic and already know your personality and your attitude. If you were the right person for this job, wouldn't you think that you would have been selected for this job over me? So don't get mad at me for coming in and taking this job or in this position of leadership or management. Don't be mad at me. Get mad at yourself, or don't get mad at yourself. Work on the things you need to work on to get the job. And I'm okay with that. Like you can have an attitude. I've had this in my past. Like people have attitudes like, oh, you don't deserve that. Okay, now let me tell you 5 things within this conversation we just had that can help you. So I'm going to help you develop these skills, and they're usually personal skills, but I'm going to help you develop these skills that could help you get the job you want in the future. And I think
Sometimes
that's
basic of you don't ask.
that too.
You didn't ask. I showed up and I asked for something that I knew was available. You knew it was available, and you hope that they just always saw the skill sets in you
Right.
and give it to you. You had to ask.
Yep.
And that's the difference. A lot of times we have the audacity nowadays to ask for what we want when they're hoping that they're going to be acknowledged. And I think that there's nothing wrong with wanting somebody to give you that trophy because you were the MVP. But sometimes you got to go on a campaign to get that trophy for the MVP. Right. And frankly, if you're inside of a job, and this is me personally speaking to some stuff I've had. I remember earlier in my career, I had really great interviews and I had really great opportunities because I was really good at what I was doing. And I would find out behind the scenes. I found out later on that through somebody in higher ups, they're like, yeah, you didn't get the job because they really like you at your current job. And and ironically, it wasn't like they were like, hey, let's pay him more over there. It was just like, no, we're not going to promote you because we need you in that role. And that's unfortunate when you start having to look out. So I can definitely see where a person like that may experience that because they might have just really done a good job at, frankly, typecasting themselves into a role. And it's at those points where, unfortunately, some businesses and companies like that make you have to leave outside of the organization and go to somewhere else where you can get that position that you wanted and then come back because now you qualified for it if you want to come back. Some people do, some people don't.
Yeah, I agree. That's again, you have to be an advocate for yourself at all times.
Yeah.
Like you want that job, go get that job. No one's going to hand it to you. I mean, generally not going to hand it to you.
And we're getting to the end. So what I want to do is I have 2 more things I have to do, but the most important thing is we have to talk money. When you enter into operations, what's that salary look like?
So when I entered into operations, so when I was 30, getting out of grad school.
What was that official title for that entry level job?
It wasn't industry. It was a manager. I was the client services manager of client services.
Okay.
When I got into the insurance as the operation one of the operational man. I was actually, it was more of a supervisor role. It wasn't even a manager because we do different layers there. So that, I think I was making, well, the range, I made probably like $70,000 out of grad school at that job. So the range, and I can tell you what the ranges are, at least in insurance. The range really goes in a management type of job, depending on where it is. In insurance, really goes from like 60 to probably like 80 for the first tier manager, and then it goes up from there. So when I became a director, I was making over 100 grand as a director. And then people were like, why you quit your job as a director making what during the pandemic? Um, but but yeah, that range, like operations, is because it requires a skill set that is sought after. Like you have to be an efficient manager, you have to be able to build relationships, you have to be able to manage people, which is 80% of the job in management, is managing people and personalities and doing all those different things. So that pay scale from an insurance operations manager could be anywhere from like 60 grand to like 130 grand, basically. And and that's just the average. Obviously, the higher up you get as a CEO, you can make a lot more than that. And then there's other supervisory roles that make less than that. But that's the general range if you're looking to get into operations. Depending on your background and your experience, what you can look for as starting salary around that 60,000 a year range, all the way upwards to like 120, 130 grand a year.
And so it's the chances are that 70 you hopped over 60 was because you don't have to speak to this. Don't speak to this. Sometimes they won't admit it. It does play a role in your age. They may give you a little bit more than the younger person coming in because they're like, we want this person to build up, opposed to them going up in salary so fast and throwing off the scale. So don't speak to that part, but speak to the part of how much of that hopping over 60, because you only up to the age because you said you came in at 30.
At this company,
Yeah. So not that part. I don't want to talk about that. Not that.
Yeah.
Instead, the conversation of your degrees, your qualifications, your skills.
Mm-hmm.
You see that as what allowed you to get straight in the 70s, or was it, and it probably was this too, or was it also your negotiating skills to make sure that whatever they came to the board with the first time is going to be a little bit more closer to something I want?
Yep. So I would tell people who's listening, always negotiate for what you want. You do not have to accept what they offer you. Always negotiate. If they want you, they will pay you, and they will at least work to pay you what you want if they really want you. That's first and foremost. But yeah, my experience was because I had already came from other management positions before I got into the insurance. So I had that experience plus my 2 master's degrees. And I had 6 years of management experience already, plus 2 master's degrees. So I was able to jump over that starting entry range into the 70s because of that experience, which helped me jump over that. But I also, like I said, they offered me something. And I was like, well, my goal was to get so-and-so. And I didn't get what I wanted, but I wanted more than what they gave me. And they did it. And again, it goes back to, you have to ask what you want. Mm-hmm. Like I could have accepted the job at, I think they offered me, I think it was like 60, 62 or something like that. And I remember, so this is funny. So I actually asked for like 85. So that I remember 85 because that's like at that point in my life, that's where I was like, this is what I need to do what I want to do. Right. So I asked for 85 and they offered me, I think it was 62. So then we negotiated a couple of different times. They came back with a different one. I came back with a different one. And I think I started out as it was like 72 or 73, something like that, in that range. But it comes with a negotiation. And a negotiation is a part of business. It's not a bad thing to ask for what you think your value is, because these men are in there asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're getting 80, 90, whatever they're getting because they're asking for it and they feel like they're entitled to because of whatever experiences they have. So as a mind shift, as young Black professionals, we have to do the same things. Women and men, we have to go in there and ask for what value we think we are, and don't accept less than what you think you're valued at, period. Like that's just what you have to do. And unfortunately, a lot of us just accept it because we don't think we can do anything else. You can.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hit some rapid, quick questions since we did talk the money, and that was one of the most important things. And that was this. I haven't really done this too many times. I did it one time before, and I'm starting to really get excited about doing a couple of rapid questions. So I want just quick answers. You don't have to go in depth about it. I just want to hear something about you. All right.
All right.
I already have an answer for this one, but I'm going to ask anyways. Favorite sport?
Football.
Favorite hobby?
Kayaking.
I have seen you kayaking, and
I love it.
You're thinking about that right now, but really want to do it this summer. Favorite book?
The Half Has Never Been Told. It's about, really quickly, it's about the history of slavery and how slavery translated into the capitalistic power that it has. So it talks about how slavery created the economy that is existing today, not just in the United States, but around the globe. It's a great book, great book. The Half Has Never Been Told.
If you could speak to anyone, dead or alive, not related to you, who would you speak to and why?
I'm going to say, because I'm a huge Prince fan, Prince. Not only because he's a musical genius, but he plays every instrument known to man. And he's just an interesting, cool cat, kind of weird. And the women loved him. He was like a chick magnet. So that would be my dude. I would like want to have like a whole day with him and just hang out and just pick his brain about a bunch of stuff.
If you could work at any company doing any job, what company would that be? And what position would that be?
So we talked about being like a CEO or whatever, but I'm not going to say I want to work for an organization or a corporate organization. If I could pick any job, I would be the leader of an impactful nonprofit organization. I would be like their president and CEO, sort of like the Urban League, something like that. Yeah, I would do something like that. I would want to work and be the leader of an organization that's making an impact in people's lives.
So you want to be the CEO of the Urban League?
So I want
a direct answer.
I think that I will be a great CEO for the Urban League. Yes.
Gotcha. Got it. All right. Well, that was fun, man.
Yeah.
I know you are in consulting now, so go ahead and explain a little bit about what you got going on and how people get in contact with you.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was in operations for 7 years, and I got to a point where I just wanted to get out of the corporate life and get back into community engagement and working that. So I created my consulting business, JR7 Consulting, and I do political consulting, public policy consulting, diversity, equity, inclusion, organizational change management. So my job is really a lot of different things, using all of the experiences and education that I have as a marketing for myself. I can come in and assess your organization, can help become more diverse. If I'm going into the city of Milwaukee, for example, I can come in and help them create social policy or help them analyze and provide recommendations for whatnot. So I decided that I wanted to do work for myself, and then do something that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about public policy. I'm passionate about social issues. I'm passionate about helping organizations become more diverse and do those different things. So that's what I do. My website is under construction right now, but it will be jr7consulting.org or .com. And I'll have more information about that. But you guys can reach me anywhere you want to. I am all over, not all over, but just Google Jordan Roman in Milwaukee. You look at my LinkedIn, Jordan Roman. And all my information and contact information is on there.
All right. So what would be your takeaway if you were, let me say that differently. We're looking at your younger self.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about final thoughts right now.
Okay.
And you want to leave this behind.
Okay.
What would you tell your younger self that would allow you to be further ahead than you are now at an earlier age?
That's a good question. I would say I would have told myself to get serious earlier. As I said, I was an athlete in school, so like school came easy to me. I wasn't the greatest student, but I was an athlete. So I had fun playing football and running track and all that stuff. So I wasn't necessarily looking at what my future wanted to be. I was focused on having fun in the moment, playing sports and doing all the stuff that athletes do in college, right? So if I could tell my younger self, I would say study more, study harder, get more serious about what you want to do in your life. And I'm 37 now, and I'm doing great, compared to a lot of other people. But if I would have started with my mindset at 25 versus 30 or 23 or whatever, and I know you're young, but I could have been a CEO somewhere if I'd have started earlier, and I'm on that track now, but I am not there yet. And I think I could have been there if I would have started a little bit earlier. So that's it. Like I can't change too much because I've lived a good life and I've done things I believe the right way. I've gone to school, gotten good jobs, and so I'm not lacking, or I'm not saying I think could be different, but it could be a lot better than where it is now if I would have just tried harder and started earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my takeaway for today is the fact that you really did a great job of discussing being an advocate. I mean, your whole existence, it sounds as if it's about advocating for yourself, advocating for what you want, advocating for your business to be what it should be. And you have to have the courage. You have to have the audacity to step in and say, hey, this can be better, and this is how it can be better. And I'm going to do this for you. We didn't talk a whole lot about that, but I want to stress that part. I'm going to do this for you, along with these other things that I need you to do for me so that we can become this. Painting that whole picture and showing people exactly where it comes into play for them, it brings so many different opportunities to the table and brings so many yeses to become available at the time. So I appreciate this conversation. This has been really fun, man. And like that, 2 of these. Woo, that was fun.
Yeah, man. I was like, that was a good conversation. I was like, that